Welcome everybody to another recap of our Indie Spotlight streams. This is going to be for December 2019. As always, each month we do a stream dedicated to smaller indie games as a way of showcasing titles that may not have gotten coverage otherwise. And if you submit a title for a future one, please don't hesitate to get in touch. For this first one, this is the party-based game Retimed. I have the sound off simply because we were chatting during this play, and I don't want you guys to hear our lovely little conversation we're having. But this is a party-based shooter that is built around kind of 4-player competitive play. There is a single-player, so how long you can survive mode available with the game as well. But the idea is that you are competing with up to 3 other people, and whoever gets a shot off on their opponent wins. Get the most shots and you win the round. The twist of Retime is that you have a limit of bullets. That's what you can see over somebody's head. And when a bullet is about to hit a player, you basically get your own localized time slowdown bubble that you've seen a few times already, giving the player a chance to get out of the way. You can also get access to a dash that, unfortunately, Shark, who was playing as the guy with the hat on, wasn't, or I'm sorry, I think he was playing the other guy. It's hard to tell by our footage here, but Shark was the one who was not using the dashes here. But dashing is your main way of getting out of a shot, and it consumes one of your bullets as well. So you can't use it if you don't have ammo. If you don't have ammo, you can't exactly fight the enemy. Now the game comes with, as you can see here, 8 maps, each split into varying areas. Each area has its own unique modifiers to it. In this one, you're able to shoot through platforms. In another one, there'll be bounciness, so if it hits the floor or the walls, the bullets will bounce around. And the maps kind of go in order of complexity like that. And from what we were playing this on stream, even though it was just the 2 of us, we were both enjoying the game. From a moment-to-moment standpoint, neither one of us could find any real issue with the gameplay loop. The problem that we had with Retimed is that it's a very limited experience. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first is that we were only playing with 2 people. And if we had a full house, I think that would have helped things out to some extent. But the real issue is that there doesn't seem to be any real growth of mechanics, as in new techniques, new things to alter or change, power-ups, you name it. The level modifiers themselves are locked to their respective levels. So let's say you want to have bouncy platforms or bouncy floors and walls on the very first arena, you're not going to be able to do that. It is locked to their respective levels. I think one thing developers should definitely consider doing is allowing players to mix and match the modifiers. Have portal, bouncy, floating, whatever, to kind of make things a little bit more interesting. And like I said, there's not a lot here once you've gotten the basic gist of it. But with that said, Retime seems like a pretty, no pun intended, fun time to have. Especially, again, if you can get a full house of people. Because I would say the game, you would need, I think, at minimum 3 people. Because even with 2 people, it still feels kind of limited. But with that, let's move on to our next game. And that is going to be the very musically inclined Kind. This is a game that is released, I believe, currently on the Epic Games Store. And this one is a very interesting one to say the least. This is a puzzle game taking place in a world of musical instruments. You play as 3 different characters. Each character has their own kind of movement tech or way to move around. This guy can basically move between the various, the symbols of his drum kit, as well as change his orientation, as you can see here. Each level has you basically trying to get the character to the end of the level, kind of symbolized by the musical sheet that you see in the upper right hand corner. And while it's not as brain melty as some of the other ones we've played, such as Space Cam, Baba's You, and so on, This game is no slouch in the challenging department. You see, not only do you have to deal with where the character is on the table, but also what parts of their body and where you can manipulate are also situated. Some characters, for instance, can open and bend an accordion, and based on whether the character is facing upwards or facing downwards, will determine what happens when you extend out. And the game just keeps throwing in more of these very challenging situations, and I would definitely put Kine on the moderately difficult side of things in terms of puzzle design. Now, the footage that you've seen so far is kind of the preamble to what the game really becomes. And for the first part of the game, you're able to pick and choose between the characters you've unlocked, as well as kind of going down different paths of the story, which these characters want to form a band. I guess if you're an actual musical instrument, that kind of seems like the natural step forward. And for the first part of the game, you're going through their jobs basically individually, or their story. But once you've gotten all three characters to the main stage, as it's called in this world, I guess you could say the real Dark Souls experience begins. And the game becomes almost a pseudo Lost Vikings style game, where you have to make use of all three characters and their abilities or their different ways of moving around and manipulating in order to get to the end. And this is when the difficulty basically goes off the charts, pun intended. And like I said, this is not an easy game, and you have to basically figure out the rules of all three characters in order to make any real sense of progress. But there is no sense of emergent behavior or emergent gameplay in Kine. The puzzles have a hard solution to them, and it is up to you to figure that out. In terms of the overall difficulty, we did run into cases like right here where it is possible to put yourself in an unwinnable position. And I had to phone a friend with Shark coming on to help me at one point to solve this puzzle. I mean, he actually ran into trouble with figuring out the final step of things. But nevertheless, Kine is an imaginative game. I love the aesthetic, and while you can't hear as well over my booming voice, the music is great as per the fact that we're in a music-based universe. And if you're a fan of puzzle kind of games or more of the action puzzle variety, but find stuff like Baba Is You, Space Chem, you guys want to be a little too much, then definitely give Kine a look, as we did really enjoy. Maybe at some point we'll come back to and see if we can figure out the rest of the game on stream. But with that said, let us move on to the next game. And we are switching over to Fractalus. This is a roguelike. It is currently on early access via itch.io. And again, you will find links to all the games in the description down below. And developer got in touch with me to check this one out. And what we have here is another game trying to emulate the best qualities of a roguelike. The game is turn-based. We are able to kind of explore a procedurally generated world, and essentially we're doing everything that we've seen in previous games. Fight monsters, get loot, try not to get killed. The game comes with 3 different difficulty levels that determine enemies' health and kind of how much damage they'll do to you. But the concept of this game is that we are exploring a multiverse, with each world being besieged by some evil cult, and there's of course a dangerous dungeon for you to explore. Clear the dungeon, and you'll be able to move on to the next world and kind of conquer this multiverse of roguelikes. And the game itself, at the basic level, is not that bad, but we did have a few issues in terms of just the moment-to-moment gameplay and feel. The controls are kind of annoying. At the moment, there's not a lot in terms of quality of life, such as being able to easily sort through gear, quickly equip or de-equip items, and you will start to get very fill in terms of inventory. You can see whenever I swap to the inventory screen there, you have a lot of backpack space, and it will begin to start to fill up. Gear will have various attributes to them, and it appears that it is all procedurally generated. Now, with that said, there's only some balance issues at the moment. Range seems to be ludicrously overpowered right now, as characters tend to have like homing shots that there's no real way to dodge them, and your only option is just kind of tank the arrows as you try to get in close for a kill. One interesting touch is that enemies will drop food that you can eat, and the food is procedurally generated as well. So you can find like epic and legendary food items, which in turn will allow you to kind of get bonuses for a specific period of time. When you kill enough enemies, you will level up, and you'll be able to choose from one to basically up one of your attributes. Now, as you saw there, I did get killed by the enemy, and the game features softcore and hardcore difficulty. On hardcore, you lose your character permanently. Softcore, you just kind of head back to the town base. But this presents another big issue, and one I think that we'll have to take a look at. You see, when you die, the world does not reset. Now, on the outside, that doesn't sound like it's a big deal. But you see, here's the issue. If the world doesn't reset, that means all weapon drops, all enemy positions, and the entire layer of the dungeon is preserved on each play. So what happens is, let's say you get to a part with a really strong enemy and there's no way for you to beat him. If you die and restart, there's no real way to make any more progress, because everything is built on the abstraction of gear. And like I said, with kind of the overpowered nature of range at the moment, that does present a very big issue in terms of motivating a player to keep playing. Graphically, the game is serviceable. I'm not sure if this is the final graphical aesthetic, or they'll do more improvement going forward. But we did also have some issues with diagonals, and it was kind of weird having to make use of, I think we use QEAD for moving diagonally. Now, as you're watching the footage here, it is working on the I go, you go principle. So enemies will only move or respawn after I move and respawn. And there does seem to be a wide variety of gear, but with the balance issues as they were, it's kind of a hard game to recommend at the moment. And I do hope we see more iterating and refinement on the roguelike systems, because having kind of a multiversal roguelike could be a lot of fun and interesting to do in terms of being able to kind of modify the various areas or getting very different environments and challenges going forward. But at the moment, it just isn't there yet. With that said, we're on to our quick Patreon supporter and sponsor shout out now, and when we come back, we'll take a look at probably one more game, and then that will do it for this part of the Spotlight. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. As we move into our next game, this is 3000th Duel. And from what we played on stream, this feels like somebody who really wanted to make a Dark Souls-like in 2D. It definitely has hints of Momodora in terms of kind of like the character models and just like the overall look to it. But the game hits all the same notes of these games. We have a mysterious story told through dialogue or through lore and items, an amnesiac protagonist, and of course a great mystery full of monsters and a lot of exploration to do. The game itself, from what we played, I think we did about 40 minutes to an hour on stream. we went through a few of the major areas, and as with a Souls-like, you'll unlock shortcuts. Try to avoid getting killed, which will drop your resources that you can see in the bottom right, and you'll find upgrades. And the game does feature some late Metroidvania aspects to it, unlocking additional moves, as well as allowing you to kind of change and unlock new areas as you get further in. Now, one thing the game does that kind of reminds me of Salt and Sanctuary is that there is a skill tree that you can make use of. As you kill enemies and level up, you'll be able to apply points at these specific statues to raise your attributes. Each time you raise an attribute, it unlocks basically a skill tree points here. And the skill trees are kind of gated, that you need to apply enough points in the previous or in the current tree in order to move that line to then unlock skills in the next row. But the only way to unlock that next row is to find the subsequent upgrade in the world, usually in a new area or after a boss fight. And we kind of mess around with things such as being able to do a charge attack, unlock spells, and the game definitely has a good feel to it. And we got to see some of the boss fights, which the bosses seem to be more in terms of fixed patterns in terms of their fighting, or maybe very limited random. And the game itself, from what we played on stream, like, this is one of those titles I would describe as being competent. It wasn't a bad experience by any stretch of the imagination, but it didn't really do anything that was standing out to us. And we were discussing about maybe going back to this on stream to see if the game opens up more as we get past the early stages of it. When we were ending the stream, which was just about after the Spire fight, it did open up to 2 different areas to explore. With that said, if you're looking for another Souls-like fix, and you've kind of exhausted your other options, I would say give this one a check. Again, don't be expecting anything groundbreaking, but we had a pretty good time with it. And with that said, let's move on to our final game for this part of the Spotlight. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to be the most exciting game to end on. This is Martian Law. This was a tiny game that was sent to me by the developer, and what this is kind of a basic shooter, as you're trying to shoot down the missiles that are coming in and save the Martians that are dropping down. And as you can probably guess by the footage, this isn't exactly the deepest game out there. The more Martians you save unlocks more levels to play with, but the amount to save was like very exorbitant, and it was just pretty crazy. This, unfortunately, doesn't really have much else going for it. It has the basic elements of a game, but as you've been watching this footage the last like 40 seconds, you're probably noticing a very major problem with the gameplay loop. You can literally just stay in one corner, and nothing will ever hurt you. At most, there's like a giant bomb that drops down, but you can just walk over to the right side of the screen and you are perfectly safe. And unfortunately, there really isn't much else to discuss. Oh, here comes the giant bomb right there. But with this kind of title, it feels like it's more of a pet project than a full release that's available on Steam. And while I do want to thank the developer for submitting the key, unfortunately this one may have been, I guess no pun intended, the dud of the evening. And with that, we are finished with Night 1 of our Indie Game Spotlight recap for the December 2019 edition. As always, I would like to thank all developers for submitting press keys to get onto the recap or onto our Indie Spotlight. If you'd like to submit a game for a future one, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. We will play just about anything and everything as long as it can be ran, and of course doesn't blow anything up here. But tune in real soon for part 2 of our recap, as well as for our next Indie Spotlight occurring at the end of the month. As always, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.